Hello. This video is meant to show you how you can do some pretty quick graphing of quadratics on your TI-84, and also how you could maybe use it to solve or factor a quadratic. So let me just dive right into it. So I'm going to go into my y equals screen, and then I'm going to type in something basic. So let's type in x squared, and then I'm going to go to graph. It graphs it pretty quick. I've got this nice parabola in the middle. Okay, now what a lot of people don't realize is this screen is set up to show you a certain part of the XY plane. So if I go to Window, which has its own button, I can see what I'm seeing and what I'm not. So I can see that my X goes from -10 to 10, and it counts by ones. My Y goes from -10 to 10, and it counts by ones. So let me show you what I'm talking about. X goes from -10 over here to 10 over here and counts by 1. So this would be -9, -8, -7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? Same thing in the y direction, -10 to 10. All right? Now I can change that. I can manipulate my windows so I see different stuff. So I'm going to go back to Window and show you what I mean. Let's make the x minimum be -20. And make the x max be 0, and let's see how that changes things. Okay, so what I've just done is I've scooted my screen over to the left. Okay, when I was in class the other day, I compared this to Google Maps, how you can drag the map around. Well, this is how you drag the map around on your calculator, but you have to put in your numbers. Okay, so if I go back to Window, I can just change that back to -10 to 10. And when I go back to graph, you'll see that it centers it back up. Everything's good. Okay. Sometimes, however, you may graph something that doesn't show up on the screen. So for instance, I'm going to go back into my y equals. I'm going to arrow over here to the end, and I'm going to say plus 15. So what this is going to do, it's going to take that graph we just had, it's going to bump it up 15 spaces. And when I hit graph, you'll see that nothing's happening. Okay. Well, the graph's there. And I can show it to you. Let's use a different function. I showed you how you can manipulate the window to see more. I'm going to do zoom. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out because I just want to see more of what's going on. So I'm going to go down to option 3 and hit enter. Now, when you zoom out or when you zoom in, it's going to ask you for a center. Okay, it doesn't really say like center question mark, but it wants to know where you want to center this. So I'm going to pick the origin and hit enter, and then it's actually going to zoom out. And now I can see my parabola. Okay, so you could zoom out 2 or 3 times, keep zooming out like you can on Google Maps, and you can see more of the screen. Another zoom function I can use is I can go to zoom fit. So if I hit the zoom menu, and I'm going to go down to zoom fit and hit enter, it sets the window automatically to give me what's a nice pretty graph. Okay. So what this has done is this has moved the window up so I can see my parabola. Now this works great when you're graphing like 1, maybe 2 things. If you're graphing 3, 4 things, no, you do not want to do this. Zoom fit is a bad idea if you're graphing several things at once. But if you're graphing one thing, it's a good thing. Now let's say that I go graph something like, let's go back and change this to y equals x squared. So I'm going to go to the plus sign and start hitting delete. And I'm going to hit graph. That should not be the case because I took out the plus 15. Let's go to zoom standard. Well, what I was going to show you is if you go to zoom standard, standard will snap you back to the middle. So I'm going to go down to option 6 and hit enter. And then it centers me back up. Okay. So I know what was wrong. Before, when I hit graph, I expected it to come back down, but my zoom was set to zoom fit, so it automatically adjusted my window to fit my new graph, which is nice. So there's my parabola, and I can see that it's graphed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph 3 different parabolas on here, and I want to show you something. So I'm going to go to y equals. I'm going to graph x, let's say x minus 3 squared, and I'm going to add 5 to that. Then I'm also going to graph x squared again. And then I'm going to graph x squared, let's say, what factors? So let's say 3 and 4. So plus 7x plus 12. Okay? So I've got 3 different parabolas, and I want to show you something on the graph. There's my first one. There's x squared. And there's my third one. Okay? So you'll notice that I have a parabola that's up here above the x-axis. If you have a parabola that's above the x-axis, it has no real solutions. Okay? So if the reason this is important is if it doesn't have real solutions, it's not going to factor for you. So I could graph a parabola and tell if it's going to factor and tell if it's how it's going to factor. So this is not going to factor. All right? Take this graph in the middle. It touches the x-axis, but it touches it one time and then it comes back up. This is going to factor, but what's going to happen is I'm going to get the same factor both times. So for instance, I would get x plus 1 times x plus 1. You're going to get a repetition of factors. Okay? This graph over here goes down below the x-axis barely, as we can see, and comes back up. This is going to factor, and it's going to get me 2 distinct real answers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to zoom in. I'm going to move the center over. Notice I'm just using my arrows to arrow over. And I'm going to hit enter. And I'm going to get a better look at what the bottom of this graph does. So I can see that it dips down below my x-axis and actually comes back up. So zooming in and zooming out can provide you with more detail. Okay. Now I want to snap back to the middle, so I'm going to go to zoom menu and hit 6. And it'll zip back to the middle. Okay, so that's what you can tell about quadratics by graphing them. I want to show you how you can solve a quadratic. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to clear out this first quadratic. I'm going to clear out this first quadratic. And then I'm going to go to graph. You'll notice I'm just left with this third one. I actually want to solve this. Okay, so I'm going to go back to zoom, and I'm going to do fit. Okay, so I'm going to do zoom fit. See what it gives me. I don't really like that. I'm going to go back to zoom and hit option 6. So I'm going to go to zoom. I'm going to go to zoom in, which is option 2. I'm going to scoot my center over. I like the way this looked earlier when it was actually nice and pretty. So now I can find these solutions, these roots or these zeros, by using my calculator. So I'm going to go to second, calc, which is above trace. I'm going to hit option 2 for 0. And then it's going to ask me 3 questions. It's going to ask me for a left bound, a right bound, and guess. So for the left bound, I'm going to use the left and right arrows to move my cursor along my parabola until I'm to the left of the point. And I'm going to hit enter. Notice it gives me a mark saying where my left bound is. I'm going to go to the right of the point for right bound and hit enter. Notice my left bound and my right bound face each other. The arrows point towards each other, and my point is in between them. So then I'm just going to hit enter on guess. And I got -4. Okay. Now I'm going to do second calc again. I'm going to do option 2. I'm going to go to the left of this point, which is right here. I'm going to go to the right of that point, which will work up here. And then I'm going to hit guess. And I get -3. Okay. So I now know that the 2 answers to this quadratic are -4 and -3. Now if I understand the relationship between factors, I know that -4 corresponds to a factor of x plus 4. And I know that -3 corresponds to a factor of x plus 3. So whatever quadratic this is, I know it factors to x plus 4 times x plus 3. Okay? So you could also use it to factor if you get used to that. So that's the basics of how you can do some pretty cool stuff with your calculator. And I hope this helped.